If you stumbled across this story, don't forget to hit that like button, drop a comment about what you think of humanity's place among the stars, and subscribe if you love tales where humans surprise the galaxy in the most unexpected ways. Now let's dive into tonight's story. Hunters cornered the predator, then a human walked in. The jungle writhed with sound, alive with the chatter of unseen things, but the hunters moved through it like phantoms. 20 in number, armored in alloys no primitive world could forge, each bore scars carved by years of survival against the universe's most lethal beasts. They had come for one prey only. The captain led them, tall, skin marked in crimson war paint, his mandibles clicking in steady rhythm. His eyes, black and unblinking, swept the trees with mechanical precision. He had pursued this quarry for over a year, tracing its trail across 3 worlds, each scar left behind a testament to its savagery. He had seen villages gutted, war machines toppled, outposts abandoned. The predator had earned many names in galactic tongues. The Maw, the Dreadfang, the hunger that hunts. To him it was simply his prize. Signs fresh, rasped his second, crouching to study a gouge carved deep into a tree. The bark glistened with sap, dripping where claws the length of swords had raked it. Hours at most. The hunter's weapons hummed, sleek and cruel. Plasma nets coiled around emitters, containment spikes pulsed with violet energy, and gravity snares hummed low enough to make the ground itself tremble. Their ship had dropped them into this jungle like spears into the heart of prey. Orbiting high above, its sensors painted a grid of the terrain. No escape routes remained. They had cornered the most feared predator in the galaxy at last. The captain raised a fist, halting the squad. His mandibles twitched as a low sound bled through the canopy. It was not the scream of birds, not the rustle of prey fleeing. It was a growl. Long low. Promising violence. Every hunter froze, instincts pressing them still. The sound came again, closer this time, vibrating through the soil beneath their boots. The captain's lips drew back. It knows we are here. One of the younger hunters shifted uneasily. Then let us spring the trap before. A branch snapped above. The youth never finished his words. A shape blurred from the canopy, mass colliding with him, claws rending armor like paper. His scream was short, cut off by the wet sound of teeth closing around his throat. Energy fire lit the clearing. The hunters loosed bolts of violet flame, streaks hissing into the beast. The jungle lit in flashes, each one illuminating the predator. It was larger than rumor dared suggest, nearly 3 meters at the shoulder, its form a coil of muscle, fur matted with old scars and fresh blood. Its eyes burned yellow, intelligent, furious. The body of the fallen youth dangled from its jaws before it tossed him aside like nothing. The squad pressed together, shields locking. Traps were deployed in a storm of activity. Projectors stabbing into the soil, energy beams arcing to form barriers of sizzling light. The predator snarled, tested the crackling walls, recoiled. "Contain it," the captain roared. They drove the net emitters forward, cords of plasma snapping shut. The predator whipped around, faster than sight should allow, slamming a hunter into a tree hard enough to splinter bark and bone alike. Its claws scythed through the netting, slicing arcs of white-hot sparks into the dark. It was a storm-given flesh, tearing into them with a ferocity no numbers could blunt. But for every hunter that fell, they pressed tighter, step by measured step, herding it back. The captain's mandibles clicked in grim rhythm. "Yes, fight. Spend your strength. There is no forest wide enough, no cave deep enough, no sky vast enough. You are cornered." The predator roared, echoing across the canyon walls. The sound made the younger hunters falter, their grips tightening on weapons slick with sweat. This was no mere beast. Its roar was a challenge, a declaration of war. Blood sprayed as it lunged again, but this time the containment spikes activated in unison. A lattice of violet energy snapped shut, encasing the monster in a prism of light. It struck the barrier, lightning crackling across its hide, searing fur and flesh. Still it fought, battering against the walls, throwing itself again and again, even as its wounds smoked. The captain advanced, lowering his spear. "End of the hunt," he said coldly. "End of the legend." The predator's breath came ragged now, sides heaving, legs trembling with blood loss. Yet its eyes remained fixed on him, not broken, not afraid, only burning with the fury of a cornered god. He lifted his weapon high, savoring the moment. "Kneel before your betters." And then the predator did something none of them expected. It stopped. Not in defeat, but in anticipation. Its gaze shifted, not at the captain, not at the hunters, but past them. Toward the treeling. The captain frowned, mandibles twitching. He turned his head slightly, sensors sweeping. The forest had fallen silent again. Not prey fleeing silent. Not storm brewing silent. A different quiet. A quiet that waited. The youngest of them whispered, "Something else is here." The captain dismissed it with a click of disdain, raising his weapon again. But the predator's growl deepened, vibrating the air until even the energy field seemed to flicker with its resonance. Then a branch cracked. A shape emerged from the shadows of the trees. Not another beast. Not another squad. A man. Human. He walked with no armor, no weapon beyond the machete strapped lazily at his hip. His clothes were worn, boots muddy, shirt torn at one shoulder as though the jungle itself had tried and failed to swallow him. His eyes were steady, calm, taking in the tableau with unsettling ease. Every hunter froze. Their files spoke of humans as newcomers, fragile bipeds barely stepping beyond their cradle world. Farmers. Traders. Hardly worth mention in the archives of predator and prey. Yet here one stood, utterly unafraid, staring into the cage that held the most feared killer in the galaxy. The predator, stilled. The beast that had ripped through their ranks, defied every weapon, thrown itself against the unbreakable walls. It lowered its head slightly, a gesture no one had ever seen it offer. Its golden eyes softened, not with submission but with recognition. The captain's mandibles twitched. For the first time in years of hunts, he felt something he had forgotten the taste of. Uncertainty. The human tilted his head, expression unreadable, and stepped forward. The predator growled again, not at the hunters, not at the human. At the world itself, as if warning it to bear witness. The captain's grip tightened on his spear. The hunt had changed. And none of them knew how. The cage of violet light hissed around the predator, every spark burning its flesh, every strike of its body against the barrier sending waves of pain through already battered muscles. Blood matted its fur in dark streaks, dripped from its claws and pooled beneath its heaving chest. Still it did not fall. Its kind were born to endure torment, bred by nature to face extinction and claw their way back into existence again and again. But for the first time in years of endless fighting, it did not look to the hunters in front of it. Its golden eyes remained locked on the human standing beyond the wall of light. The hunters whispered to each other, voices sharp with unease. They had spent decades learning to read the predator's movements, memorizing its patterns, calculating the inevitability of its violence. Never had it shown hesitation. Never had it paused before a killing strike. Never had it looked at another being with anything but hunger or hate. Yet now, it stood motionless, sides heaving, eyes fixed on a fragile creature none of them considered worthy of notice. The captain's mandibles clicked hard, a warning to his men to steady themselves. He felt the balance of the hunt shifting, though he could not yet say how. He turned his black gaze on the human. "This quarry is ours," he said, his voice deep, resonant, unafraid. "Leave, fragile one, before you are caught in the slaughter." The human didn't flinch. He stepped closer, boots sinking into the damp soil. His gaze swept the hunters as though measuring them, weighing them, finding them beneath his concern. Then his eyes returned to the predator. His voice was calm, almost conversational. "You've cornered it." The predator's ears twitched at the sound. A growl rumbled in its chest, low but not directed at the human. It was a sound of recognition, not threat. The captain's mandibles flared. Recognition. Impossible. He jabbed his spear toward the human. "You know nothing of this creature. It has destroyed armies. It has left worlds stripped of life. Step aside." The human's lips quirked in the faintest shadow of a smile. "Yeah," he said quietly, "I know exactly what it's done." The words carried weight that none of the hunters could measure, but the predator seemed to understand. Its body shifted, not forward in attack, but upright, forcing itself to stand tall despite its wounds. Blood streamed down its legs, but still it rose, gaze locked on the man. The lattice of light shuddered as it leaned against the barrier, pushing toward him, not away. The captain snarled. His instincts screamed at him that something unseen was happening, some current running between man and beast that he could not read. He had hunted across 20 systems, slain monsters whose very names curdled lesser blood, but never had he felt excluded from a predator's focus. "End it," he barked. The hunters surged forward, tightening the containment field, feeding more power into the spikes until the air itself screamed with energy. The predator staggered, body racked with pain, fur alight with searing burns. For an instant, its knees bent as if it would finally collapse. But then it looked at the human again. And it refused. With a roar that shook the canyon, it hurled itself against the barrier. The field buckled, bent, split apart with a burst of lightning that seared the eyes of every hunter. Two emitters exploded, shards spinning. The beast burst free, claws rending the ground as it landed in the middle of their formation. Chaos followed. A hunter was ripped in half before his scream reached the air. Another was hurled into the canopy, vanishing into the leaves with the crack of shattering bone. The predator fought like a storm unbound, its body torn and bloody but moving with the fluidity of instinct and rage. The captain charged, spear blazing, and drove the weapon deep into its side. The predator roared, spinning, claws tearing across the captain's armor, shearing off a pauldron and sending sparks into the air. Blood from both of them painted the ground. The squad reformed, circling, but hesitation spread among them like disease. They had seen it bleed, thought themselves close to victory, and yet it still moved, still killed, still burned with defiance no technology could cage. And all the while the human did not move. He stood at the edge of the carnage, eyes locked on the predator as though waiting for something. His hands were empty, his face unreadable. The hunters, even as they fought for their lives, stole glances toward him, baffled by his presence. Why did the beast not strike him? Why did it ignore him while tearing them apart? The predator's strength waned with each heartbeat. Blood loss slowed its strikes, its movements dulled by exhaustion. The captain pressed harder, driving it back step by step toward the canyon wall. Plasma nets fired, tangling around its limbs, hissing with heat as they burned into its flesh. Gravity snares thrummed, pulling it toward the ground. The predator stumbled, fell to one knee, and the hunters pounced. Spears drove in, burning rods of energy spearing into its body. It roared again, but the sound faltered. The captain lifted his weapon high for the killing strike. At last, he hissed. The predator's gaze turned one last time, past the spear, past the circle of hunters, past the blood and the light, toward the man standing calm in the shadows. It growled, soft now, almost a rumble of acknowledgement, as if yielding its final breath not to the hunters who had spent their lives chasing it, but to the human who had done nothing yet stood as though he had always been there. The human finally moved. One step forward. Two. His boots cracked twigs underfoot. The hunters froze at the sound, their heads snapping toward him as though he had just broken some sacred law of silence. The captain snarled. Stay back. This is not your place. The man ignored him. He stopped just outside the circle, eyes calm, voice quiet but carrying like steel. You don't know what you're doing. The captain laughed, a harsh clicking sound. We are hunters. This is our purpose. He raised his spear again. The man's voice dropped to a murmur. Then you're already dead. The predator's chest heaved, claws scraping the soil, body broken but unyielding. The hunters tightened formation, oblivious to the shift happening before their eyes. The man's presence was no longer passive. It was a force, steady and undeniable, altering the rhythm of the battlefield with nothing more than calm defiance. The captain thrust his spear down, and the human stepped into the circle. The hunters recoiled as if a line none of them could see had been crossed. The predator's eyes flared with renewed fire, its growl rising even as its body bled out beneath it. Something had changed. The man stood between the beast and the killing blow, unarmed, calm, and utterly unafraid. The captain froze mid-strike, the tip of his weapon hovering inches from the man's chest. His mandibles quivered. For the first time he saw no prey, no weakness, no fragility in the human's eyes. Only certainty. And certainty was the one thing every hunter feared. The jungle hushed. The predator's growl deepened. The hunters shifted uneasily. The man looked at the captain and spoke only once more. You should walk away. The words fell heavy in the clearing, heavier than the weapons, heavier than the predator's roars, heavier than the blood-soaked soil. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the predator surged upward, claws flashing, fueled by something beyond blood and bone. And the hunters realized too late that the fight was no longer theirs to control. The human's boots pressed into the soft earth as he stepped fully into the circle of blood and fire. Around him, the hunters hesitated, their weapons half raised, their instincts torn between attack and retreat. No prey would ever walk into the jaws of the hunt. No fragile species should face the predator and remain calm. Yet here was a man who did both, his gaze steady, his movements unhurried, as though this carnage were no more than an inconvenience. The predator's body trembled from exhaustion, muscles twitching under shredded flesh, but its eyes fixed on the man. Recognition glowed in that golden stare. Not fear. Not hunger. Recognition. It lowered its head, just slightly, enough that the hunters closest to it faltered. They had studied the creature's behavior for years, memorized its patterns, measured its savagery. Never had it offered deference. Not to kings. Not to fleets. Not to gods. Only to this one man. The captain's mandibles clacked in fury, his voice like stone grinding. What are you to it? The human didn't answer. His hand brushed the air, calm, a gesture more for the predator than the hunters. The beast responded by stilling, even as blood streamed from its side, even as its chest shuddered with each breath. That moment of obedience unsettled the hunters more than any roar. The captain snarled. He is nothing. He is fragile flesh. And this. His command cracked like a whip, but no one moved. The men under him glanced between the human and the predator, their grips uncertain on their weapons. The man's voice finally broke the silence, quiet but cutting. If you strike, you won't live to leave this canyon. The captain bared his teeth. You threaten hunters? Do you know how many predators we have slain? The man's eyes narrowed slightly, though his expression remained calm. Do you know how many of you it takes to kill one? His chin lifted toward the predator behind him. And do you know what happens when you're not fighting it alone? The words hung heavy, an implication too large for them to grasp. The predator stirred at the sound, growling low, not in anger but in answer. The captain laughed harshly, mandibles clicking wide. You think yourself ally to a beast? It will tear you apart the moment you falter. The man took one more step forward, placing himself between the spears and the predator. His voice remained calm but iron threaded through it. It's already had the chance. A ripple of unease passed through the circle. The hunters exchanged glances, trying to reconcile the sight of the most feared apex predator in the galaxy showing restraint before a human they had dismissed as weak. The captain's grip on his spear tightened, fury mixing with doubt. He lunged forward, stopping the blade's tip an inch from the man's chest, daring him to flinch. The man didn't move. His eyes held steady, unyielding. The predator surged with a roar that shook the ground. Chains of plasma snapped, nets tore, and the beast lunged not at the man, but at the captain who threatened him. The hunters scattered as the captain was thrown backward, his spear ripped from his hands. The predator landed heavily, blood spraying, but it stood over the human like a wall of muscle and fury. The man didn't retreat. His hand lifted once more, brushing the predator's hide. The massive creature leaned into the touch, a sound vibrating from its chest that no hunter had ever heard, a rumble, almost content. Silence followed, broken only by the predator's ragged breaths. The captain scrambled to his feet, mandibles wide in disbelief. Impossible. His voice cracked, rage tangled with fear. This creature bows to no one. To nothing. The human's gaze flicked to him, hard as iron. Then maybe it saw something you didn't? The hunters whispered, unsettled, their formation broken. The predator's wounds still bled freely, its body weakening by the heartbeat, but its stance remained defiant, bolstered by the human at its side. Together, they radiated a presence that unnerved even the most battle-hardened among the alien squad. The captain pointed a claw at the man. You stand in the way of destiny. We are chosen to end this scourge. The man's voice cut across his fury. You're not ending it. You're trying to cage what you don't understand. That's why you'll fail. For the first time, hesitation crept into the hunter's eyes. They had chased this quarry for years, believing it unstoppable, believing themselves its end. Now, faced with a man who treated it not as a monster but as a partner, their certainty wavered. The predator staggered but held itself tall, its gaze burning with a wild light. It had fought for survival countless times, alone against legions, but never had it fought with another at its side. Something ancient shifted in its core, something more than instinct. It stood not only for itself but for the man who had stepped into its battle without fear. The captain hissed, rallying his men. He is one. We are many. Strike them both down. But none moved. Fear lingered in their eyes, the predator's defiance mirrored in the human's calm. The circle broke, small steps backward spreading like cracks in a wall. The man's gaze swept across them, steady, measuring. You should walk away, he said again, quieter this time, but the weight of it was undeniable. The captain bellowed in rage, raising his spear high, but before he could strike, the predator lunged forward again, crashing into the formation with savage force. Hunters scattered, weapons firing wildly. The man moved with sudden precision, seizing a fallen emitter and hurling it into the fray, its energy field detonating in a flash that sent two hunters sprawling. For the first time he was not passive. He moved with purpose, each motion sharp, practiced. Not clumsy, not desperate, trained. The hunters realized with dawning horror that this human was no bystander. The predator fought beside him, its massive form shielding him, claws tearing through attackers that came too close. Man and beast moved as though they had done this before, their rhythms aligned, one covering the other without hesitation. The hunters had come expecting to conquer a beast. Instead, they found themselves facing a partnership, one that combined ferocity and cunning into something greater than either alone. The canyon shook with the clash, dust rising, weapons sparking, blood soaking the earth. The captain, locked in combat with the predator once more, snarled as his mind reeled with the truth clawing at him. This was no longer the hunt they had come for. This was something far more dangerous. He looked at the human, at the calm in his eyes even amid chaos, and for the first time, doubt cracked through his arrogance. Who was this man that the galaxy's deadliest predator bowed to him? The battle raged, but the outcome had already shifted. And every hunter knew it. The canyon rang with violence, every heartbeat another explosion of sound and fury. The hunters pressed in, their formation splintered but not broken, their weapons carving streaks of violet light across the dust. The predator roared and hurled itself into their midst, a storm of claws and teeth, its wounds weeping but its fury undimmed. And beside it moved the human, unarmed no longer. He seized weapons from the fallen, turned tools of the hunters against them with terrifying efficiency. Where the beast broke bodies with brute force, the man cut with precision, each strike guided not by savagery but by strategy. The hunters had come to cage a monster. Instead they found themselves facing a duet of destruction, feral instinct and human cunning moving as one. The captain fought to restore order, mandibles clacking commands through the chaos. Tighten. Press forward. It is wounded. His men obeyed, tightening the circle, blades and nets flashing. Yet every step forward cost blood. One hunter fell screaming beneath the predator's fangs. Another collapsed as the human drove a stolen blade through his chest and ripped free before the man even blinked. It was not brute strength that made the human terrifying. It was adaptability. When a plasma net lashed at him, he turned it back on its wielder, entangling the alien in his own trap. When a gravity snare pulsed beneath his feet, he rolled free, scooping the device and slamming it down against another hunter's armor until the pressure crumpled metal like tin. He did not hesitate, did not question. Every movement was calculated, and yet carried an edge of wild improvisation no disciplined army could predict. The predator shielded him with its bulk, intercepting spears and strikes, but not like an animal protecting prey. It moved like a comrade, its golden eyes never leaving the human for long, as though each choice it made in battle revolved around him. The hunters faltered. Their training had not prepared them for this. They had studied the predator for years, anticipating its every strike, cataloging its patterns, but the human shattered those patterns with every breath. Together, the two formed something entirely new, something no doctrine, no weapon, no tradition could counter. The captain refused to yield. He charged into the fray, his spear blazing with crackling energy. He rammed the weapon deep into the predator's shoulder, sparks bursting as flesh seared. The beast roared, staggering, but before the captain could withdraw, the human was there. The man seized the haft of the spear, twisting it from the alien's grip with a violent snap. In the same motion he swung the weapon back, driving its point toward the captain's chest. The alien barely dodged, the blade grazing his armor and leaving a smoking gouge. The captain hissed in fury, striking with claws, but the human slipped aside, movements too fluid, too sharp. He was not stronger. He was not faster. He was something far worse. Unpredictable. The predator lunged again, jaws snapping, claws raking, driving the captain back step by grinding step. The man advanced beside it, spear held steady. Man and beast moved in rhythm, their violence flowing together, each covering the other without thought. It was not domination. It was partnership. The hunter's line broke. Panic spread like fire through their ranks. Two fled into the trees, another was dragged screaming beneath the predator's weight. Plasma bolts flared, but most struck empty ground, their aim shattered by fear. The human's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding. You don't have to die here. Walk away. Some faltered, lowering weapons. The captain's roar snapped them back, his pride refusing surrender. Stand. We are hunters. We do not flee prey. The predator's roar answered him, a sound so vast and primal it silenced every other noise. It was not prey. It never had been. The man drove the spear forward, pinning one of the hunters through the gut, twisting free in a spray of blood. His face remained calm, his eyes steady as though the carnage around him were nothing more than necessity. The predator barreled through two more, its claws rending steel and flesh alike. Together they carved a path of ruin through what had once been an unbreakable squad. The captain found himself isolated, his men shattered, the ground around him littered with bodies and broken weapons. His breath came fast, his mandibles trembling with rage and disbelief. He had hunted gods. He had slain legends. Yet here, before a single human and a bleeding beast, he felt the first taste of true defeat. The man closed in, steps steady, spear lowered. The predator limped beside him, blood dripping from its wounds but eyes still burning bright. They advanced as one, inexorable. The captain roared and charged. His claws swung wide, his body driven by fury. The man met him head-on, ducking beneath the strike, ramming the butt of the spear into his gut. The alien staggered but recovered, lashing out. The predator intercepted, hurling him backward into the canyon wall with bone-cracking force. Dust billowed. The captain slumped, rising slowly, his body broken but his will unyielding. He spat blood and glared at the human. "What are you?" The man's eyes locked on his, calm and unflinching. He lifted the spear, its point steady, and spoke one word. "Human." The weight of it crushed the air. Not a title. Not a boast. A fact. And it was enough. The captain collapsed to his knees, disbelief etched into every twitch of his mandibles. Around them, the few surviving hunters fled into the forest, their pride shattered, their legacy broken. The predator stood beside the man, chest heaving, blood dripping into the dirt. It lowered its head toward him again, not in submission but in respect. The human reached out, his hand pressing against its blood-matted hide, and for a moment, silence returned to the canyon. The battle was over. But its echo had only begun. Word would spread. Hunters had failed. The apex predator had not been slain, but had fought beside a human, protected him, bled for him. And the human had stood unarmed before death and bent the battle to his will. The man looked down at the captain, broken and kneeling, and turned away without another word. His silence was heavier than victory. The predator followed, limping but refusing to fall. Together they walked out of the canyon, two figures against the endless jungle. The captain watched them go, his vision dimming, his pride bleeding out of him along with his strength. In his final breath, disbelief still twisted his voice. "Human." The word echoed against the stone walls, and the galaxy would carry it far. The hunters had expected triumph, a clean and decisive finale to their long pursuit. Instead, they found themselves trapped between two predators, the beast they had cornered and the human who had walked into their hunt. The cavern walls hummed with tension as rifles tracked not only the wounded alien but also James, who stood tall with his arms loosely at his sides, the faintest smirk tugging at his lips. The unspoken question ran like wildfire among the assembled hunters. Who was more dangerous, the dying monster or the unarmed man? Ealer, the huntmaster, barked an order for his squad to reposition, but his voice lacked the unshakable command it once carried. He had seen men who flinched under pressure, but never one who looked into the eyes of a cornered apex predator and remained calm, almost amused. The beast, massive, armored, bleeding yet unbroken, fixed its gaze on James. A low growl reverberated, not hostile but expectant. The humans watching through scattered monitors would later swear the creature was waiting for permission. James stepped forward slowly, deliberate, as though the barrels of alien rifles meant nothing. Each bootfall echoed in the stone chamber. His voice, low but resonant, cut through the nervous hisses of the alien hunters. "You've made a mistake. That thing isn't prey. It's mine." The words drew a ripple of disbelief. Laughter, nervous and sharp, sputtered from one of the younger hunters, but it died quickly when the predator shifted, dragging itself nearer to James. Its talons scraped rock, but its monstrous head lowered, eyes locked on the man like a soldier awaiting orders from his commander. Ealer raised his weapon higher, finger tensed on the trigger. "Move away, human. You don't understand what you're facing. This beast has killed worlds." James' gaze flicked to him, sharp as a blade. "And you think you can tame death with nets and rifles? You have no idea what it respects." He extended a hand, palm outward, inches from the creature's snout. To the horror of the assembled hunters, the predator exhaled, a deep, rumbling breath that stirred the dust at James' boots and then stilled. The beast's posture slackened, head bowing in a gesture no hunter had ever witnessed. The moment shattered when a single rifle cracked. A bolt of plasma seared past James' shoulder and struck the predator's flank. The roar that followed shook the chamber like thunder. With terrifying speed, the beast surged, scattering hunters like leaves in a storm. But even in its fury, its path bent around James, never striking him, never so much as brushing him with its massive limbs. Chaos reigned. Aliens screamed, their formation broken. Ealer shouted orders to regroup, but his words drowned in the cacophony of claws and screams. James didn't flinch. He strode toward Eler through the madness, his voice carrying even as plasma bolts sizzled and flesh tore. You came to corner a predator. You've learned what happens when the predator has a human. Eler swung his weapon toward James, desperate. You're no master here, human. You're just another body waiting to be torn apart. His hands shook on the grip, betraying the hollowness of his threat. Before he could fire, a shadow loomed over him. The predator, battered but unbowed, reared behind the huntmaster. Its roar made the chamber quake, spraying heat and fury. But it didn't strike. Instead, it shifted, blocking James with its bulk, towering above both man and alien. The implication was undeniable, it was defending him. The surviving hunters froze, their instincts clashing with training. Every code they had ever been taught insisted predators could not be claimed, could not be befriended, could not be anything but foes. Yet here stood the impossible, the galaxy's deadliest beast shielding a human-like kin. James' eyes hardened, every trace of humor gone. Leave. If you value your lives, you'll run now and never return. Because if you don't, he glanced at the predator, whose claws gouged deep furrows into stone as it growled low, you won't be hunting. You'll be hunted. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then the younger hunters broke, bolting toward the exit tunnels, weapons abandoned in their panic. Eler, shaking with rage, refused to move. This isn't over. You've doomed yourself, human. You think you've tamed it, but it will kill you as it killed everything else. James tilted his head, expression unreadable. Maybe. But I know something you never will. Predators don't bow to fear. They bow to strength. And strength isn't just claws or plasma fire, it's trust. The predator lowered itself, pressing its armored flank close to James. The gesture was intimate, protective. The huntmaster's eyes widened, horror blooming into recognition. His rifle slipped from his grip and clattered against the stone. The chamber dimmed as the alien lights flickered, damaged by the chaos. The shadows deepened, and the predator's silhouette merged with James as though man and beast were one figure. Together they advanced a step, and Eler stumbled backward. The climax came not with blood but with certainty. The hunter's creed, their pride, their endless pursuit, all shattered by a truth they could never reconcile. The predator was no longer theirs to conquer. It had chosen. James stopped just short of Eler, his voice cold and final. Run. Tell your people. Spread the story however you like. But when you speak of tonight, remember the truth, you didn't corner the predator. You cornered yourselves. Eler's breath hitched. His defiance crumbled under the weight of that truth. With one last glance at the monster towering behind James, he turned and fled, leaving his legacy in ruins. The chamber grew silent again, broken only by the predator's steady, rumbling breaths. James laid a hand against its scarred hide. The beast shuddered, then settled, curling down onto the stone like a titan at rest. For the first time in its existence, the predator seemed at peace. James lowered himself beside it, exhaustion finally showing in the set of his shoulders. He leaned against the warm, ridged armor, his voice dropping to a whisper meant only for the creature at his side. They'll come again. Stronger, angrier, desperate to prove what tonight has taken from them. But they'll never understand, will they? You're not a weapon. You're not prey. You're something greater. And maybe, so am I. The predator's massive eye closed, the chamber darkening further as if the world itself acknowledged the bond forged here. For a long moment, human and beast sat in silence, a pair of predators who had chosen each other over war. Above them, distant and faint, came the sound of the hunters' retreating ships. The galaxy would hear of this night. Some would call it heresy, others madness. But all would know fear, for a truth had been born that could not be killed. The deadliest predator in the universe had bent its head to a human. And in that cavern where two titans rested, a new legend was carved into the bones of the galaxy. The story would spread from star to star, whispered in awe and disbelief. Hunters would hesitate. Councils would argue. Empires would tremble. Because when they remembered the night they thought they had cornered the predator, they would also remember the human who walked in and changed everything.